Hi, my name's Tony, and in this video we are going to be walking through some basic transmission settings when it comes to running an IVT transmission and pulling a planter. I've got the display simulator pulled up here on my screen. There's three different ways that we can get into the transmission settings that I'm talking about. The first one is going to be just finding the transmission box on your screen on the tractor run page, clicking it, and it'll bring us into the transmission settings. The second way to do it is by going into the menu in the bottom right corner, making sure you're on machine settings, and then clicking on transmission. Now, each tractor may be laid out a little bit different, but mine is right here in the bottom right corner. That brings us into transmission settings as well. The last way to get in there, and you won't see it on my screen, but in a tractor, you have the shortcut or hotkey bar down below the display. One of those buttons is going to have an image similar to this gear within the transmission box. That will also bring you into the transmission settings. Once you're in the transmission settings, this is where you're going to get to kind of decide how you want that machine to run. Now, with an IVT transmission, there's three different ways we can run it. We can run it in manual, which is just that. You run the throttle all how you want. If you want it wide open or if you want it down at an idle, it's all done with the slider or the finger adjusted throttle. Full auto is going to be the exact opposite of that. You can run the machine wide open, but it will do what it needs to back down RPMs or increase speed, whatever it needs to, and the machine has total control. All you do is select your forward or reverse speed. What we want to do is talk about some settings that you can run in a custom mode to maybe bring down the RPMs or make sure that we have enough RPMs while we're pulling our planter. So when I select the custom button, you'll notice that this box right here kind of lit up. So in full auto, it's grayed out. In manual, you can also select those settings. But in custom, what we want to do is we want to then select what our lowest RPM is going to be. So you'll notice here we can have two different settings, eco on or eco off. Essentially, that gives you the ability to have two different low RPM settings, whether you have your eco on or eco off. Now, keep in mind what this is this is the lowest RPM that you would want the tractor to run while pulling your planter. So we get a lot of questions on how much RPM do I need to flow X amount of hydraulic oil? Well, with that question, you can refer to your operator's manual, and within the operator's manual of your tractor, it will give you a chart of what hydraulic flow you get at X RPM. So with a planter, when we're dealing with vacuum and the hydraulic drives and whatnot, we would not want it to fall below a specific threshold. Otherwise, we would lose our vacuum, we would lose the hydraulic flow to our hydraulic drives. So that's something you're going to want to keep in mind. Now, to change that, all you would do is click on it, and you would then go up and down based off of what your settings are. Now, keep in mind, every tractor, every implement or planter is going to be a little bit different based on planter size, based on tractor size, whether you have no hills or you've got some pretty rolly terrain. Each operation is going to be a little bit different. Once you've decided what you want your lowest RPMs to be, then we can go into custom settings. And within custom settings, it's going to give us a couple more options to decide how we want this tractor to operate. So the first one on top you'll see is droop. The easiest way to think about droop is how far do you want that tractor to lug before it starts to increase RPM, or in the case of an E23 or E18 transmission, how far do you want it to lug before it downshifts and increases RPMs? But in this case, with an IVT transmission, we're talking about it would essentially just be how far down do you want it to lug before it increases the RPMs. Now, that can be changed again. It can be taken up or down. So if you think that you want the tractor to increase its RPMs sooner, you would want to decrease your droop. Or if you would want the tractor to lug down further than what it was, then you would increase your droop. Now you'll notice here again, you have two different options, one with PTO on, one with PTO off. In the instance of an electric drive planter, if you have tractor power generation, you would be playing or adjusting with the PTO on droop. If you do not have tractor power generation and everything, your PTO is off while you're planting, then you would adjust your PTO off droop. The last thing that we would recommend is turning off load anticipation for your hydraulics, your rear hitch, as well as your PTO. Now, what load anticipation is essentially when you push down on SCV 1 or 2 or 3, the tractor anticipates a load. So what it's going to do is it's going to ramp up the RPM of that tractor in anticipation of something happening. Now with a planter, you don't have a whole lot of draft back there. You're not going into the ground very deep, so we don't need to anticipate that load. Because the other thing that's going to do is as we increase our RPMs, that's going to play with our vacuum of our planter as well. So making sure load anticipation is off in a planter setting is really going to help you keep that consistent flow of hydraulic fluid back to your vacuums, back to your hydraulic drives. Now, keep in mind, if you're pulling a tillage tool or something with a heavy draft load, you're going to want to make sure that these are on, depending on what you're doing, if you're utilizing the rear hitch or you're utilizing SCVs. Because in that case, when you lower that tillage tool or that heavy draft load into the ground, it will anticipate that, increase the RPMs, and you won't essentially kill your tractor. So in a planter setting, we want to make sure that these are turned off. The last thing we can do with our planter and making adjustments with the transmission is, of course, our field crews. So there are a couple different ways to adjust that. One of them you see here on the default tractor run page. You're able to select the maximum engine speed. So we know that we do not need to run tractors or planters, mind you, at full RPM. We can back down. We just need the minimum amount of flow to get our hydraulics, to keep our fans consistent, our hydraulic drives consistent. That's all we need. So you can adjust that right here by clicking on the button and scrolling up and down. You would turn on or off your max engine speed here as well. Now in the tractor, there's a couple different buttons that you can select to also do that as well, right by your throttle or your thumb or where your hand rests. The other way to get into that is going into menu and selecting engine. Now you'll notice here you can also set up two different maximum engine speeds. So whether you want 1 or 2, you can set up 2 different max engine speeds in these machines. The last thing I want to show you is that this was on a Gen 4 command center talking an IVT transmission. Every tractor, even going back to GS3 command centers with IVTs, have this ability to make these adjustments, as well as our E23 transmissions and our E18 transmissions. So I just want to show you real quick with this screenshot. This is what the pages will look like if you're running a GS3 command center. So the first picture on the top left there is, of course, the transmission settings page. And then below is going to be that custom settings within the transmission. Same thing if you're running a Gen 4 command center with IVT and Command Pro. It's going to look a little different. Still the same settings, you still have the same information or the same adjustments, but it's just a little bit different. And then you'll see on the right hand side here a Gen 4 display with an E18 transmission. So maybe talking in your 9Rs if you're pulling planters with a 9R, which is becoming more common. This is what it's going to look like in there. Again, same adjustability, same settings. You'll notice here, if you do not have a rear hitch, you're not going to have that rear hitch load anticipation. But overall, making or setting up custom settings when pulling a planter is really going to help your tractor run efficiently. Now, again, every operation is different. Every operator is different. So it's all going to depend on what you like to do, how you like that tractor to run, and how you want that tractor to run. Thank you for watching. Connect with us by subscribing to Precision Ag Answers on YouTube and following RDO Equipment Company on social media. Visit rdoequipment.com for more precision ag resources and solutions.